Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show. Outlander is the Starz TV show about Claire and Jamie Fraser, a time-travelling 20th century nurse and her 18th century Highlander husband, who after many adventures have found themselves stranded in America with a few members of family and friends. Episode 1, America the Beautiful, opens with some Native American types building tall stone cairns that look oddly familiar. Oh wait, that's because they're doing like the same stone circle dance that we saw at Cragnadoon. Ominous. But back in the sort of not quite modern day, we find ourselves with Jamie, and he's off to meet his pal Gav from last season, and he's in jail. And it turns out that Gav got sexy time with the wrong lass, and accidentally ended up killing her husband in a scuffle that followed. See, Jamie wants to go like full prison break on him, but Gav turns out it's like he's not all about that. He'd rather just hang and literally be hanged by the neck. I mean, he wants to see a friend smiling as he goes, but he thinks it's fair. He should get killed for that happened, and otherwise he knows that Jamie will just end up on going on the run again. So, whatever floats your boat, Gavin. But Jamie agrees and he doles out some rum, because, whiskey is hard to come by in the New World, but then another prisoner wants some as well, but I'm sure that won't be important later. Anyway, back out on the street, it's hanging time. And true to their word, Jamie and the cool gang don't lift a finger. But, Jamie does a wee smile. And that, it doesn't really help because, he still gets hanged. But then, Gav's pal Lesley gets a bit sad and crazy. And that makes a bit of a disruption and it causes the other prisoners to leg it. And then they get caught. But the sneaky guy who asked for a drink, he goes the other way and he ends up actually escaping. And back at the pub, the cool gang all joke and they reminisce about, like, Gav. And then they sing, like, a wee sad lament in Gaelic. And, it turns into a full big pub sing-along. And it's, it's quite nice. And that night, Jamie and Wee Ian have to sneak into the graveyard to bury him in secret, because the local government don't want to bury hanged men in consecrated grounds. But staring into like a deathly, dirty hole stirs up like some PTSD memories in Ian about having to sleep with Gaius, which seems kind of harsh if you think about it. So anyway, him and Jamie have a bit of a tender moment where his uncle and him bond over memories of having less than consensual sex. And shortly afterwards, they go back to the wagon and, it's a ghost! No, it's not. It's a guy called Stephen Bonnet, and he's the guy from the jail who escaped. He's been hiding in the wagon beside dead Gav. It turns out that he's like a thief and a pirate. So against all common sense, Jamie decides it's a good idea to help him because, future plot convenience presumably. And then they later end up getting stopped by the British Army, so they just pretend that he's a corpse because he's all wrapped up. But then he gets in a bit of a scrape when one of the British soldiers bayonets him to make sure he's dead. But somehow the guy mistakes a bit of venison for his leg or something because, it's dark or whatever. Anyway, he's okay and Claire does a wee bandage on him and he charms her a bit of chat and then he wanders off and says bye to them. So it's been a rough day, so McDoo and Time Nurse just pitch up a tent and they get a wee bit soppy and huggy and then they get a bit raunchy. And the next morning when they're sitting literally in the afterglow of like dawn, Claire spins out a wee soliloquy about the New World and starts telling Jamie about how all the new people will come to America and how the natives get a bit of a crap deal out of it. Meanwhile, they've got a plan to get back to Scotland, so they get all dolled up and go to like a swanky dinner party where they're going to try and sell off one of the gemstones they recovered from the ship. And it's a really big dinner party, and like the people make wee jibes and chuckle at like Claire's clever wit, and then one rich chap's like all about having a look at Claire's big jewels. And then the governor's all like Jamie and wants a bit of his loyalty, like offering him some sweet deal on some land if he'll swear allegiance to the crown, like again, but be ready to like side with the governor if anything goes wrong. And that seems like a good idea, but later Claire's talking to him about it and she's like, well, I know the future and that might suit the short term, but we really don't want to be on the losing side of a war yet again, because if we stick with the British, we'll be on the side that loses the War of Independence. And like the next day, wee Ian shows off like some dice winnings and a pet wolf he won like playing with some sailors. And then at the table, a lot of them admit that actually all of them want to stay in America. Most especially like Fergus and Parsley, because it turns out they've gone and made like a wee baby mushroom soup. Aww. So the whole gang take to the river on this barge that is absolutely in no way badly composited onto a green screen, and it's completely not fake at all. Not in any way, no. Yes. Anyway, they have a chat with that's Grant Stott, isn't it? Oh my god. Anyway, that's Captain Scott of the Cape Fear, and his bestie, the freed slave. After a while, it's time for Jamie to give Claire a cool wee box of medical stuff so that she can continue to be a cool doctor. And then they get a wee bit soppy again, talking about like the ring that he gave her when they got married and how, he gave her like the pearls that were his mother's, but she's given them now to Bree, and they're going to be a family heirloom. So, it's all good. It's all a nice start to the new season. Oh my god, they just got attacked by pirates. And look, it's only Stevie with the hat bonnet and his dudes, and they lay into Jamie and wee Ian and beat them up, and they nick all the jewels. And then one of them gets kind of frisky with Claire, so Big Les smacks him about, and he ends up getting dead from Bonnet for his trouble. And Bonnet makes Claire give up the rings, but she manages to sort of swallow them. But then she coughs up Jamie's one, and he nicks it. And then the pirates bugger off, but she's still got the other ring, but she's all upset. And wow, that's it. Welcome to America, folks. So what did I think? Well, this week was a bit of a mixed bag. There's some really nice wee moments in this and some great acting turns from the cast. Let's talk about some Jamie and Claire stuff. We've come to expect that. They're both really good. But then we also had stuff like the quiet moment with Hayes in the prison cell, and that amazing bit with wee Ian and Jamie at the graveside. That's an issue I didn't really expect them to bring up again. Kind of a topical thing these days, because everyone expects that a wee boy would have been over the moon to sleep with an attractive older lady. But the fact is, Gaius essentially raped him, and she threatened to kill him as well. And he's only a young boy. And so I hope this isn't just a lip service moment, and this is actually going to be character stuff. It's not just going to be glossed over and we'll forget about it, but we'll see how it goes. Another thing was a lot of stuff in this episode made practical sense, and what I mean by that is think about when the soldier stabbed Bonnet in the leg. At first I was like, oh, okay, so they're stabbing in the leg, and they say that specifically so that, he doesn't die. That's awfully convenient. But then I thought, actually, no, because, the soldier's probably just doing them a favour, because if you had a corpse in the back of, a wagon, and you stab it in, the chest or the tummy, it's going to leak nasty guts and organ goo all over the cart, and it might infect any food and stuff, and they'd know that, because that's the kind of thing people had to do in that time. So it's a sensible move. So stab the leg, and that's probably going to leave minimal mess, So, also, how did he stab the venison? Because it's probably dark and they were using torches, so that kind of made sense to me. Also, Bonnet robbing them at the end, that made total sense. I worked that out while the episode was going on, because, he overheard them talking about the gems when he was hiding in the wagon. And in fact, I wondered why they had such a blunt discussion of the gems during that scene, because it was so obvious.
And perhaps we'll be able to find a buyer for the gemstones there.
Aye, the gems will fetch a bonny price.
But it was clearly so he would overhear it. Also, those sailors that wee Ian won the money from in the Wolf, I could be wrong, but those could well have been those pirates. And, maybe a young lad like Ian would be a bit loose with his tongue, and he might have slipped up and mentioned that they were off on the river barge to River Run. Maybe, maybe not, but think about it. Also, it's really funny seeing Grant Stott on the show. I mentioned, the captain of the barge, because, in Scotland, he's best known for being a local radio personality. And, he does a lot of pantomimes at Christmas, but usually plays a dame. So that was just a bit bizarre and strange. But there you go. But wow, if there wasn't a lot of convenience plotting faffing about in exposition this week. Now I know this is the new season starter and we're picking up a few months after the end of the shipwreck at the end of the last season, so sure there's going to be a little bit of catching up needing done, but we don't actually get a huge sense of what's been happening and what's been going on. It's been 4 months or something, and presumably everyone must have been working or something, because they've got enough money to have bed and board at the inn, and Jamie's mixing with high society, and Claire has a nice dress that wasn't completely wrecked by the seawater, so they must have been doing something during that time, but they never mention it, and we just have to assume that it's past and it's fine. And there was a few pacing issues with it this week as well. It was a bit slow and clunky. There was a definite feel of, right, let's get the heroes from the end of last season to the place they need to be for this season to continue episode. So we now have them poor, although I think they've still got the £100, and without any pals and kind of shaken up. But I do wish the show had gotten us there at a bit more of a leisurely pace. You could really spun the events of this episode into a couple or more, and I imagine the book probably takes a lot longer to get there. And I'm also guessing that, the start of the book and season 2, what's happened here is a lot of the stuff's been condensed down to, the most important events. And that's why we got so many voiceover info dumps. I get that, as ever, Claire's voiceover is, as far as I'm concerned, some of the worst writing on the show. It has been since the very first episode. I didn't like it then, I never have during it, and I still don't. Apologies to Matt Roberts, who I think it's his gig, and he's the guy who does, he said that on a few of the things, that he's the guy who writes the voiceovers. But, I just don't like it, mate. It's not good. It feels like it's written for the idiots who can't really understand what's happening and follow the basic plot. I also feel like it's a shame to wipe out so many old characters in a winner. We had the same thing in season 3 with everyone except Jamie getting shot after the Battle of Culloden, those who didn't get killed. And, we lost Gav and Les in one episode. And sure, Bonnet spared Jamie and Claire because they helped him maybe, that was, otherwise why not just kill everybody? And I kind of wish that we could have had more continuing characters. I mean, there's other people will probably turn up later, but for now, I kind of feel like, now we have to get a whole load of new secondary characters in, until they die. I mean, I presume that they're not going to kill off many of the main characters, if any at all. It doesn't feel like that kind of show. It never has been up until this point. But the other thing is, there was a bit of a predictability to this episode. I mean, granted, we're like, season 4 of the show, but I'm noticing stuff just feels like we've done it before. I mean, like, not just scenes of like Jamie and Claire, which were like cute but felt a bit everyday and obligatory. Like, it was almost like, oh, we must be about due a sex scene, tick. Haven't had a lot of scenes of Jamie telling Claire she's pretty and clever, like, tick. Haven't had a scene of Claire talking about the future to Jamie, tick. And even when we got like to the banquet scene, like the staging and the shooting of that really, really reminded me of like the banquets in France during season 2. I mean, it actually looked like it was almost the same size of room. Like maybe it was probably a redress of exactly the same set. I mean, similarly, while I mentioned that, I felt there was a bit of a throwback to the France stuff as well. There was that horrible mismatch in France when there was that scene where somebody was like had thought somebody else was raping a girl and something, and then the scene turned into a comedy by like having Jamie and Murtaugh like running around like with a rope hitting people and knocking them over to like comedy jig music. Well, I felt that was totally like off kilter, and I really didn't like it. And the final scene of this episode, I felt the same way with like this Ray Charles song playing over like the end credits. I don't understand what they were going for, like that final scene, but I don't think it comes off. I mean, you can clearly see that they shot a serious scene because there's dialogue and everything, and they're talking and they're doing their damnedest, but we never hear a word of it. Instead, all we get is this cheerful music that kind of makes mockery of what should have been really powerful. I mean, maybe other people thought differently, maybe it worked for them, but for me, nope. And another quick point, that barge scene, as I said, it looked terrible. I mean, it's right up there with the PlayStation 2 looking CGI Palace of Versailles in season 2 and like that crappy Gaius beheaded head from season 3. I mean, it just looks bad. Now, I mean, I'm sure to have them actually poling down the Cape Fear would have been a bit ridiculous because, you'd had to fly the actors thousands of miles across the world for just one shot, or they'd have to do it with doubles and it wouldn't look as good. So they just didn't. They just went, oh, we'll just shoot it against a green screen. But in that case, why not just try and make the shots like mostly just the actors and like the barge? Because it was a big barge. It didn't have to just be them against the skyline, which looked really, really bad and fake. Now, not because the background was fake, because it was clearly like a real like footage of a river, but the lighting on them just looked wrong in so many shots. It was so obviously not real. But anyway, so far I'm impressed. It seems interesting. I'm keen that they're in America and excited to see what goes on. I feel like the stakes have now been raised a bit, and we might actually have an interesting villain. Although, I'll have to see what more he does and says, because at the moment he's just a bit sort of like, oh, well, I'm Jack the Lad and I just robbed you. But we'll see. So till next time, I've been Ian, and these have been my grumpy opinions.